I think that's the point. It doesn't help, and not knowing how many fixtures, etc., might be a factor in the eyes of some prospective sponsors. Who knows? Listen, we'll move on, Dean. Lawrence here. Next one for you. You'll enjoy this one, Lawrence. You're quite technical minded. So Craig Holland, who is a Glasgow supporter, who I happen to know, has been in touch via WhatsApp. Hi to you, Craig. And Craig has asked a couple of questions. The first one, Lawrence, is this one. I enjoyed the discussion on combined rider and bike weight. The conclusion in Speedway appears to be that lighter riders have an advantage. I wanted to use a counter argument where extra weight may be an advantage. It's accepted that in motorsport, it's accepted in motorsport that the power to weight ratio is critical. I would argue that a heavier rider may be able to produce more drive and power to the back wheel. There are examples of heavier riders in Isle of Man TT races, for example, who have an advantage on the more powerful 1000cc bikes. So bring it back to Speedway, Lawrence. I think it was Simon Lambert was talking about Dan Bewley weighing 8 stones and Simon was 11 or 12 stones, and how could we ever equalise them to make them equal? But the point that Craig's making is, doesn't that give Simon an advantage because he's got more weight to push that back wheel into the track?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Speedway's a little bit of a unique sport because you've got wheel spin. You're not going for full on traction all the while like a road racing. You've got however many high percentage of traction with Speedway. Obviously, you've got the rear wheel spinning, and get your weight back earlier for drive and that sort of thing. And you can see that even with the light guys, the Smart's the master of the movement of body weight, isn't he? You see him in the slow mos and he's moving back, to get all of what weight he's got over the back wheel, and then you see the front lift, and then you see his legs swing like a pendulum, don't they? They swing forward to bring the front down. He's a master of that. He's all over the bike, using it, and you can feel the guys all vouch for me here when I say that you can feel that grip. You've got no suspension on the rear, so it's your ass is sort of feeling everything that back wheel was doing. You got 7 psi at the time. You can feel every little ripple and bump, and you can feel when it hits a bit of grip and drive. So you can see the lighter guys. The weight advantage when you've got momentum. Lightweight guys are. They've got the advantage like that, but once you're at speed, but the heavier guys, depending on if it's ultra slick sort of thing, the weight over the back wheel earlier. But they're swings and roundabouts really. But the sport has definitely changed with the rider's body, all over the bike, trying to get grip and feel, and especially when they're out wide, right on the edge of that cushion of the dirt, in the grip. And they're moving around on the heavier riders will react different to lighter riders. But a lot of the guys are envious of the lightweight guys like the Beards and the Smart Slicks. They once you get going, they absolutely fly, don't they? Unbelievable, really.
Listen, the more middle-aged that I get, the more I am jealous of those slender young nymphs of Speedway riders that we see. Dan Bewley, you've got a lot to answer for. Craig, hopefully that goes some way to answering your question, Craig Holland. If you're enjoying the discussion, watching on YouTube or indeed listening on Spotify or another podcast service, please do hit the thumbs up button below, a small but very powerful action that you can take to help the 360 channel. Dean, I'm going to bring you in on this one. Craig Holland asked a second question. I'd love to know your thoughts on differing rider styles and whether these are just natural styles or are a result of the difference in strength and weight of individual riders. I'm exampling and comparing Chris Harris and Leon Flint. Harris doesn't move much on the bike. His right leg never comes off the right foot peg, and he still keeps the power on and drives out of the turns without being pulled towards the fence. In comparison, Flint can have his body hanging right off the left-hand side of the bike, so much so that his head can be below the handlebars with his right leg up in the air, using his body as leverage and counterweight. Natural styles natural styles, Dean, or forced in any way by an individual rider's size and weight and strength?
You've got, I suppose, your size does sort of, dictate how you ride the bike. If you remember, somebody like Hans Nielsen was very gangly on his bike, legs sort of out and everything. And you got some Eric Gunderson at the same time, who was quite small and was very compact and tight. Completely opposite styles, but the same effect. Bomber's is a grass tracker, you can tell. And one thing Bomber does, which sort of I don't think anybody else in British Speedway does, is he sort of two wheels it into the corner, especially at Glasgow. He doesn't come in, absolutely wang the throttle open. He'll come in and sort of two wheel it until he hits the dirt line, and then he'll pull out. Leon Flint, he's got a very gangly left leg, but he has got quite a. Well, he has. If you watch him, his legs is like a square. Comes out like a little bit like Hans Nielsen's used to.
Do you mean right leg, or you said left leg?
No, left leg.
Left leg,
you
right.
watch him. He's quite gangly on the bike.
He's got a gangly right leg as well, haven't you, Leon?
Well, maybe, but I think height does dictate the way you ride the bike. I mean, I've always, back in the day, I used to watch Lee Adams, and I used to think, well, everybody did. It's like sitting in an armchair.
Yeah.
Now, I could never ride a bike like that. I even tried. Right, I can't even hold the handlebars like he does, because he doesn't hold. A lot of riders do this, especially Australians now. They don't hold the grips right on the inside. They're sort of halfway across the throttle. And Lee Adams was like the first one I ever saw do that. Well, when I tried that, I just fell off. I just like, why can't I ride like that? Do you know what I mean? I tried sitting down the way he does. I can't, because that's just not the way. It's just, so I suppose size, weight, I suppose it plays a bit of a thing. It dictates the way you ride the bike, but I can't say there's any advantage. I mean, Smarslick's, I don't think it's his size that's his advantage. I just think he's the greatest rider ever to ride a speedway bike. I just think what he does on a bike is not down to size. It's him. It's his ability. He's just. I've never seen anybody ride a bike like him. He's just something special. But if he came up against, I don't know, Hans Nielsen back in the day, would he have beat him? Maybe. Do you know what I mean? Certainly a lot faster into the corners, but was he, So I don't think, it's certainly, height is not a hindrance to a good rider. There's Sam Masters. Sam Masters is quite tall.
Yeah.
And he's a decent rider, you know what I mean?
Simon Lambert's quite tall, and he's a decent rider.
Simon Lambert's another unique style, where he's the only one who does this. He comes in standing up, and then halfway around the corner, he'll just literally plant himself on the seat. But it works for him, because that's the way he's learned to ride a bike.
That's why he walks the way that he does, Dean.
I taught him everything he knows.
So thank you, Dean. So Craig, a couple of questions asked, and hopefully you're pleased with the responses. Just a selfish plug, if we may, and a cryptic one at that. Watch out for 360's social media, Facebook predominantly, this weekend, possibly Saturday, possibly Sunday, for a new 360 Speedway launch, just in time for Christmas. That's all I'm going to say. Now let's move on to the final part of this discussion. Every day is a school day, and I have been tutored in the last few days by the extremely well respected Gordon Pearman has been in touch, and Gordon's a man I've worked with in the past around the Glasgow scene, and I've got a lot of respect, a lot of time for Gordon. So he's always he's in permanent holiday, that man. Anyway, I'd love half of his air miles if that was possible. Gordon has taken me to task a little bit. I'll be honest, and I'm happy to air on 360 what Gordon was a little bit animated about, and it was us that got him a bit animated. So we talked last week about improving rider safety, and we identified the residual risk to riders of air fences lifting sometimes, and riders be able to slide underneath, etc. I mean, we talked a bit about that, and there's been a lot of supportive feedback on social media, which is kind of agreed with our concern about that. However, Gordon has schooled me a little bit. So Gordon is telling me, I'm going to read out a couple of things that Gordon wanted to amplify. So Gordon knows a thing or two about air fence and some of the science and some of the research and development that's gone into the evolution of air fences. So the first thing is, Gordon was at pains to inform me there is no such thing as an air fence. We all talk about air fences. There is no such thing as an air fence. We have APBs, additional protective barriers is what we have. So an additional protective barrier can be the inflated variety, which is what we know and colloquially refer to as air fences, or they could be the polyfoam version. But ultimately, Gordon makes the point that these are not fences. They are additional protective barriers, APBs. Gordon poses the question, when did we last see a rider injured because of an APB lifting? Now, Gordon, to his credit, because he's always a very open and honest guy, he did acknowledge that Ty Buffenden's injury at the beginning of last season was due to an APB lifting, but Gordon goes on to say that there were multiple reasons why that happened, installation being one of them, and the impact speed being another factor in causing that particular barrier to lift. There's the latest version APB. Glasgow has one. I don't know which other clubs do, but Glasgow have one. They invested in one last year, and the design allows the base to sit in a trench and a front flap to be buried under the shale, which I was aware of at Glasgow, if I'm honest. So there's a latest version. I'm going to say that again. It allows the base of the APB to sit in a trench, and there's a front flap which is buried underneath the shale to provide some sort of weighting. And in combination, that mitigates the APB from lifting predominantly. Gordon does say it is entirely possible to build an APB inflatable or polyfoam that will not lift, but it would be so rigid as to be liable to cause injury. So the current design and all the research and development that's gone into the best current product is the product I've just described that Glasgow happen to have. I apologise, I don't know which other clubs do. The inflatable versions are designed for energy absorption. That's a difficult word to say. But even the best is only homologated for impacts up to 65 kilometres an hour, which is why it's called an additional protective barrier and not a safety fence. So obviously, it's a kind of obvious thing to say, but the benefit of certainly an inflatable version, as Gordon says, is to absorb the energy from impact, and obviously avoid and mitigate risk to the rider. However, to Gordon's point, in homologation terms, even that design is only homologated for impacts up to 65 kilometres an hour. Final piece of information Gordon shared, that there is actually a lot of science, a lot of testing that goes into that particular product, and although they cannot prevent injuries 100% of the time, they clearly go a long way to minimise them, and we've all seen many instances and examples of exactly that. That was a lot of information, Gordon. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for correcting. We didn't want to mislead on 360 Speedway. Obviously, we engendered a bit of a discussion last week, but it's always good to have a more rounded subject matter. And thank you, Gordon, for taking time to reach out. Carol, that's a lot of information, a lot of scientific and technical information. But what Gordon has shared, it makes complete sense, right? Gordon's acknowledging that APBs, not air fence, APBs are not fences, but they're there to give some protection to riders before they would ever reach a fence. And given what Gordon described around the latest style, which Glasgow happen to have, and other clubs around the country, and no doubt around the speedway scene internationally will also have, they are doing their best to try and anchor the barriers and avoid them from lifting full stop.
Yeah, we tried we tried at Peterborough, and we said this all along, that the barrier, the protective barrier, we obviously all call it an air fence, should be below the surface of the track. So it should be in a trench. We went, obviously when the referee turns up for a meeting, he'll look at the fence, the timber fence, whatever fence you've got behind your barrier, to say, yeah, that's fine. Look at the barrier. Yeah, that's fine. You've got to clear the shale off of the kickboards, off of the rubber flap on the bottom of the additional barrier. And our argument was, if the shale builds up on the kickboard, on the fence, on the barrier, that's going to protect the rider from the barrier lifting with the extra weight on the flap. So we actually want to leave it there and hope that it builds up during the meeting, because it's that extra weight. And the last thing you want is obviously a bike scooping up the rubber flap and then lifting the air fence and somebody going through it. We had, obviously, if people was there at the 14 tournament when Louis Kerr went under the air fence on the third and fourth bend and actually went through the tractor gate, and luckily, survived, thank God. But that was a similar sort of situation. If that air fence was sat in the ground, it probably would have protected him a lot more. Certainly on high speed tracks, you could probably get away with it at your Edinburghs, your Plymouths that are not so high speed, but certainly around Peterborough, Sheffield, them sort of places that are quick. You want that extra protection, and like we said, keep the shale on the fence, keep it down. It will tether it down. Ours was always tethered at the bottom anyway, so we was tethered at the top of the fence and at the bottom. So we had loops on the bottom. We had a rope all the way around the bend that hooked onto the bottom of the fence to keep it from lifting. So if a pipe did go underneath it, it'd only lift a certain amount. So we tried to protect it as much as we could, and obviously we had many injuries with riders going under the fence and hitting our wooden fence. It was damn hard. I had to hit it a few times, so I know how tough it is. So anything to protect the rider is key for me. And for a referee saying, "Oh, it's got to be clean," and then just giving the reason why we keep it the way we do, I thought was a perfectly good reason, and for safety purposes, I thought was perfectly safe for the rider. What would you rather? The bike's going to skid over that shale and then hit the fence, hit the additional barrier. So it's going to protect him more than anything. But yeah, we certainly looked into burying the barrier into the track. Now we struggled because obviously the events that are held at the showground, you couldn't have a drop off at the edge of the track, because if somebody was to fall off it, there'd be hell to pay. So we couldn't do it. We wasn't allowed to do it, but that was something that we certainly looked at doing, and we thought that would be the best idea to stop it lifting. And the other option was to have an additional barrier filled in the base with either a sand, so the bottom section was filled with sand to give it that extra weight to stop it lifting. That was something again that we looked at. But yeah, protection for the riders is key, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, thank God for APBs, as I'm now going to call them. So there you are, everybody's a school lesson. So no more air fence references, APBs from now on. And thanks again to God. It sounds, Carol, to your point, it sounds like that particular feature has now been adopted. So there is now a flap which, by intention, is kind of tucked under shale to provide that sort of weighting. That brings us to the end almost of episode 31. We've done a lot of talking. Hopefully hopefully some relevant and entertaining discussion. Just wanted to squeeze in a quick reminder that we are down the final few days of our Speedway Experience Day competition for November in conjunction with AMSA, the Amateur Motorcycle Speedway Academy. We're going to extend it, so we won't run the competition in December because of the holiday period, the downtime. So we will extend the November competition for another week or so. So there's still time for you to enter. Look on our Facebook page for the pinned post at the top of the Facebook page. It was originally posted on the 4th of November, 6th of November, I think it was, if you want to scroll back and find it. Still time to make someone's Christmas, so you can nominate yourself or a family member or a friend, and they will have a chance. If you nominate them on the Facebook page, they will stand a chance of winning a Speedway Experience Day courtesy of AMSA. Remarkably, guys, that does bring us to the end of episode 30. We will stand down our rider memories and whatever the other word was. We'll come back. Memories and reveals. We'll come back to that in a future episode. Carol Johnson, Dean Felton, Lawrence here, thank you very much once again for your time. You tackled a whole bunch of varied topics tonight, so I think we need to all need to go up and have a bit of a lie down in a dark room. Listen, once again, thank you very much for looking in. Keep across all of the 360 output. Look out for that special launch post over the weekend, just in time for Christmas. And look after yourselves. We will be taking a break over the Christmas and New Year period, but we will absolutely be back next week and at least the week after, possibly 2 or 3 weeks in December. And we're even looking into a bit of a pre-Christmas special edition. So if we can make that work, we will give you more information on that soon. But meantime, look after yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
Good night,
Night, everybody.
Good night.